What's up, everybody? Just a really quick, unscripted video sharing my thoughts on the Pluto anime. I just finished it, and I'm running late for video, so this is what we're doing here. And I want to apologize, by the way, because I was working, I promised a video, and I just missed my window of opportunity because I had some health issues. Basically, my neck was hurting so bad that I could barely sleep, and I couldn't do anything creative. And it's just, I didn't want... Because I was in the script writing phase, and I didn't want to write something when I was in pain because I would just kind of like do it by the numbers. That video is the video covering the 1939 Musashi novel. That's 1,000 pages, the 27 or 28 volume Vagabond manga, and also the Samurai Trilogy series. They're all connected in one beginner's guide to Musashi. And during the time that I was dealing with all that, I started watching and reading the Basara manga. It's something that I was always curious about, so I might do that sometime soon. As far as the Beginner's Guide to the Journey to the West, I don't know what I'm going to do about that, because I'm in the stage right now where I'm realizing that there's no good adaptations to it except for, like, Chinese TV shows. So I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to do that, because it's kind of outside the scope of the channel, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that really need to know that everything that they know about Journey to the West is wrong, and all the adaptations and all the inspirations are so far off base that they don't know anything about it, and I think it's important that people know that. So I'm still deciding what I'm going to do about that. So anyways, just giving you guys a bit of context about the way I feel about Pluto and Astro Boy. If you don't know, a few months ago I did a beginner's guide to Astro Boy. That was a real big eye-opener for me, because I went from someone who was thinking that Astro Boy, I would hate it, it's just some kid's cartoon from the old days about some little robot cute boy that just beats up a whole bunch of meaningless baddies, but I was way off. And through the process of experiencing and working on that video, I read the 1950s manga, I watched the 1960s anime twice, I think I watched the 1980s anime twice, and then I had a difficult time with the 2000s anime. I pretty much experienced all of the other things that came after that too, all the kids shows and stuff too, so I pretty much experienced everything except for the Adam the Beginning manga, which I hear was pretty good. So I really came to love Astro Boy, and I was really surprised by a lot of things about it. And when I got to the point of reading Pluto in that, and by the way, check that video out if you haven't yet. If you're at all curious about watching Pluto, you need to watch that video. And I'll just say it right here. Pluto is not... I still feel this way, you can disagree, but Pluto is not an anime or manga for people who don't know anything about Astro Boy. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of people out there with negative reviews. I've already seen someone now, negative reviews and misunderstandings. They didn't explain this. It doesn't make any sense why they did this. But you got to understand that Pluto is based on a 2-episode mini-arc within the 1960s, pretty much within all of the Astro Boy, the mainline Astro Boy versions. And I think a lot of people that are going to watch Pluto, they're not really going to understand a lot of things, and they're going to complain about it. So I'm just going to say this. If you hear anybody complaining about Pluto and they have not either read the 1950s Astro Boy manga, they haven't seen the 1960s anime or the 1980s anime, totally invalidated. I know I should have looked this up before recording the video, but I don't know which exact version of the World's Strongest Robot mini-arc with Pluto that Urasawa was inspired by. It couldn't have been the 2000s anime. And here's the thing, the 2000s anime changes so much about the original Astro Boy because the characters are different motivations, so totally different context for a lot of different things. So you really can't go by that. And I know a lot of people will want to, especially now that it's got that new translation out. I know a lot of people will want to go by that. And it's wrong. It's just different. And it's a good anime. I definitely recommend checking it out as per my beginner's guide video, but it's totally different in many different ways. So another thing that might surprise people about Pluto is that a lot of people would think that Astro Boy is like what I said. My first idea about it was just some kids show with meaningless battles and stuff like that, but it's not. And Pluto has a lot of, it deals with racism, it deals with the meaning of life, what it means to be human, it deals with the duality of all of our emotions, like, love is a great thing and hate is a terrible thing, but you can't have one without the other. They're kind of ingrained in our nature, and in many ways that's what makes one special to us, because of the contrast of the other. And a lot of that is in there. And I think a lot of people will attribute, Urasawa of just making so many great things of Astro Boy, but in reality, all of these things and more were in the original Astro Boy, in the 50s manga or in the 60s anime. They were there. They just looked different, and there's this dissonance between the art styles that people want currently and what Astro Boy looks like, because I can understand not everybody wants to go watch 60s stuff, but it is there. Government corruption, racism, being an orphan and losing your parents, and all sorts of just things in there. And the thing is that if we were to compare Pluto with Astro Boy, whether, the 1950s manga of Astro Boy, it's really hard to say what is more mature when you're talking about the context of when they came out. So getting into Pluto, it's really hard for me to give my opinion on this in terms of that first time watching experience, because I just finished the manga a couple months ago, and the way I feel about it is that if I'm watching the anime at the same time I'm reading the manga, then I enjoy both. But if I read the manga and then watch the anime, a couple months later, it's not the same, because I've already remember everything that's going to happen. I'm not in the moment anymore, and I felt very similarly with this. When I first started off with the first episode of it, I was just, I didn't feel anything about it, so this video was initially going to be just me comparing the anime and manga scene by scene, but the more I watched it, like around halfway through the first episode, when they got into North number 2, that is when I started to really enjoy the anime and feel emotions towards that. Whereas in the manga, my first time around, I enjoyed it right away. It was blowing me away. And pretty much, I would say that this is an incredibly accurate adaptation. I did not compare every page from every episode. I did for the first episode, and from what I gather, each episode of Astro Boy, it's only 8 episodes, or not Astro Boy, I'm sorry. Each episode of Pluto there's 8 episodes, and the first 7 are 45 or 50 minutes each, and the last one is half an hour long, and each of those represent the manga, because the manga is also 8 volumes long, so it's very accurate. The only complaints that I have about in terms of accuracy are the dialogue that they use, because it just seems like there's more breadth to the dialogue in the manga. They explain things better. It's more technical. Say, for example, North number 2 was a adjudicant to the general or something in the war, and in the anime he was I was some butler in the war. It makes things simpler, which some people might like, but at the same time I like the way the manga was. I also felt like instead of art being created within the context of the scene in terms of the lighting, the ambient lighting that would be there, it felt like it was created with a certain color palette and then a filter was used over it. For example, when they were outside sometimes, North number 2 in the pianist garden, it just looked like it was designed in one way and then a filter was applied to it. So that's just the way I feel about that. But even with my complaints, honestly, you can just disregard them, because this is just some verbose, off the top of my head vlog style video, and anything negative I have to say about this are mostly from the first episode when I was comparing it page by page, panel by panel, line by line to the manga, and it doesn't have to be 100% accurate, and people are probably going to nitpick more things than that, I can imagine, because it is the internet, but this is the way I feel about it. If we had half of the anime that have ever been adapted were as faithful to their source material as Pluto was to its manga, then I think it would be a dramatic and unbelievable improvement. This is from what I can remember, everything is spot on. Maybe the dialogue here and there, maybe, you know, the filtering thing, but it's not a big deal. It is enjoyable, and after I got into the characters and just put the manga away and was just enjoying it for what it is, then I really had a good time with it. There are many things about the anime that I feel were improvements over the manga. For example, I can't go into detail about it because it is a spoiler, but there was a scene where a robot sings, and because of the audio of it, it brought a whole new level of just the overall experience, and even kind of made me teary-eyed a little bit. It was an emotional scene that in the manga, it was good, and I remember that being an emotional scene as well, but the fact that you can hear it and the animation that was added to the scene was just, it really took it over the top for me, and I really enjoyed it. And the same thing is true for a lot of different scenes. So even though the emotional impact of Pluto was slightly less than it could have been because I had already read the manga, I still was feeling the tension and the, you know, all the suspense and mystery and drama and everything. And I was really getting into it. The action was done well. You know, it's not really like this heavy action anime. There's a little bit of action here and there. So don't expect going into it that you're going to have a lot of action. But what we get is good. And there's just so much going on here that it's really dense. And I felt the same way about the manga, where I couldn't finish a single volume in one sitting. I had to get up and just decompress. I don't know why. That's just how I felt about it. I thought it was really dense, and the overall tone and mood of it was just too much for me at the time. And I felt the same way about this. So you might want, so even though they're like 45-minute episodes, maybe you want to take a break in the middle because it is heavy. So would I recommend the Pluto anime? Absolutely. Unless, A, you prefer manga, then read the manga, because you're not really missing out much one way or the other, because it's a very faithful adaptation, in my opinion. And B, you need to watch some Astro Boy. I stand by my recommendation in my beginner's guide, though my opinion has changed a little bit. In that video, I said you need to watch the World's Strongest Robot mini arc from the 1980s anime or the 2000s anime. But seeing this again, I realize that you need more context than the 2000s anime is going to give, or that the World's Strongest Robot mini arc alone will give. Even though this is pulled from that arc, it's still within the context of the Astro Boy universe, so you'll at least need the World's Strongest Robot mini arc knowledge and also the anime's introduction. So I would just recommend watch the 1980s anime first. I think that's the best middle ground here. I would like to just say watch the 2000s anime, but they changed a lot there, and it is good. I do recommend it, but you need the knowledge from the Astro Boy 1980. Some people are going to disagree, and I have no doubt that this is a show that's enjoyable on its own, but there are things that are explained better, and understanding and having that knowledge of the framework that it uses does not spoil you, in my opinion. And you know how I am about spoilers. So anyways, that's how I feel about Pluto. I gave the manga a 9. I'm just going to go ahead and give the anime a 9 too, even though I'm kind of hesitant to even give it a score because I wasn't fully emotionally invested in it because I just finished the manga not too long ago. Anyways, I had a good time with it, and I recommend checking it out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon. I'm hoping within this week on Friday, or whatever, with my Musashi video covering the Vagabond manga, the Musashi 1930s novel, and also the Samurai Trilogy starring Toshiro Mifune. Anyways, see you then. Have an awesome week, everybody.